All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up to today's planning call. I have put just now the document notes in the chat box, so you can reference that, and please also just type your name in under the attendance area. That would be wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to start with thank you for showing up, and everyone, all the hard work that you've been doing in the different spaces and working groups over this past week. I think it would be wonderful if we could do just, again, a brief round of introductions so we know who's on the call and sort of what, just give us an update on what you've been working on as it relates briefly to this climate space. Okay, so Brandon, I'll let you start us off this week.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Brandon Bethel. I'm a physical oceanographer with specialization in ocean numerical modeling and observations. But what I'm really interested in contributing to would be the sustainable energy portion of the conference. So what I've been doing over the past week is just reading through some, let's say, additional documents where, let's say, outside of just a Bahamian context, where renewable energy may work in the rest of the Caribbean, so that everybody can fully participate with my talk there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please, Visham, go ahead. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm on my phone, so I just got back from grocery shopping, so I look a little crazy. But hi, everyone. My name is Vishaan Narayan Singh. I work as a postdoctoral researcher at Princeton University and NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory. So I'm over in New York. My parents are from Trinidad, and I work with a group called Caribbeans for Climate, which is really about making academic connections and part of it is aligned very much with the mission of what's going on here. So hence, while I'm here, happy to be here.
I'll jump in. Shanda O'Neill, pronunciated them. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I am an energy engineer and a human rights advocate. I've been working on, well, I'm also in YOUNGO and women and gender contact points. So we starting to pick that up as regional climate weeks are happening and going into what seems to be COP and New York Climate Week and all those kind of stuff in September, October, November. Also, technically, been working a little bit on like solar geoengineering and like climate overshoot commission advisor thing. And yeah, see how that goes. Should have a report coming out soon around that. So yeah, thanks.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Lauren, and I'm working on the communications strategy for this RCOY. I'm from Grand Bahama in the Bahamas, and my background's in communications, but I recently graduated from Columbia University in New York, where I studied sustainable development. So my background is in environmental science and how we can communicate to engage young people in climate action.
Mario, do you want to introduce yourself? I don't know if we're going to be able to hear you this week. All right, hopefully. Marjan, I'll give you the floor in the meantime.
Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, Mario.
Okay. Marjan, we'll let you go first, and then we'll try Mario again.
Sure. I'm Marjan Finlayson. I work in the climate science space in the Bahamas, and I've been doing work with, I work under the Cat Island Conservation Institute with Nikita. I also have done some great work with Lauren, also know Vishan through Caribbean Climate, and very excited to continue working today.
Mario, are you there? Okay. All right, hopefully we will get you connected. Okay, okay, you're typing in. Wonderful. Let's Mario from Jamaica, the interim coordinator of the Caribbean Youth Climate Council. Wonderful. And my name is Nikita Shielroll. I am super happy to be here today. And I'm founder and CEO of YOUNGO Bahamas and the Cat Island Conservation Institute. And I'm just celebrating the progress and momentum that I see building as each week progresses with this, the RCOY and just our general climate action plan. So with that being said, I would like us to just dive right in. If you, Lauren, can you please just reshare the master notes link in the for Mario? There we go. Thank you so much. All right, so just a brief update about our logistics. So we have made great progress with our plan for the RCOY and our program. I will share my screen right now. We are working in tandem with BICASE, which is the Barbados Youth Climate Action Symposium and Expo. So we have a concurrent program, and I think it's going to be a really powerful week in Barbados. Yeah, sorry, so many things going on here. All right, so I'm going to make it smaller, but I know that makes it harder to read, but I'll zoom in, but I just want to give you guys a full version of the ability to see this. And then, okay. So, we have been working with a team from the University of Bahamas who suggested that we use the deliberate dialogue methodology for our discussion sessions during the RCOY. And so in order to facilitate that, we need to identify a minimum of 20 facilitators that will lead sort of deliberation dialogue groups during the RCOY. So this is going to be, we have sort of set criteria that are going to go out that will be part of a call for these facilitators. And there's going to be a training. There's going to be an initial training that is conducted in the Bahamas in September. And then there will be a follow-up training that will, another sort of exact same training that will take place the day before the RCOY begins in Barbados. And that will be so that we can accommodate the facilitators who will be coming in. And this training has to be done in person. So we're going to need to make sure that the call goes out so that we identify exactly who wants to be part of this sort of facilitator process for the deliberate dialogue, and ensure then that we get them into Barbados in time, the day before. So the RCOY and both BICASE both begin on the 17th. We're starting with the registration and art wall. We have an opening ceremony and dance performance, and there's also going to be the feature panel. And this is a women in climate discussion. And right now, the key panel speakers right now include Prime Minister Motley, Dr. Adele Thomas. There's a spot for an Indigenous young person, still to be determined who that is. A young child from Barbados, someone representing different abilities and needs, and then also a Spanish speaking person. So we have sort of created, there's some speakers on the panel that have already been contacted, and that opening panel is still being refined, but this is being done in partnership with By Case, which means that there's going to be a larger attendance on day one, the opening day, of students from Barbados schools. And then we will have a networking lunch with sort of the young people who are in attendance. And then this is kind of when we split out. The RCOY will move into our first panel, which is focused on biodiversity and oceans. And so I think Brandon, oh no, you said energy. Okay, so this is the first panel on biodiversity and oceans. We are offering coffee breaks. So we'll have a coffee break, and then they'll have the first deliberate dialogue, which will be on loss and damage. And then the closing panel for that day is climate and health. Day two, we are focusing on, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to zoom this back up for you so you can see, for those who want to see, now that you've had perspective. So we're going to start with the Caribbean storytelling workshop with creatives, and so Chandel and team are building out that segment of or that offering. And then also the anti-oppression and brave space workshop. So Chandel, what at some point, once we get through this, it would be great for us to get an update from you on sort of thoughts for those two segments. Okay. All the other days, so for the participants that we are sponsoring, we will be giving them a per diem, which means everyone will be responsible for their own meals. And the networking lunch will be as part of our total budget. So these are for the 60, I think it's 66 or actually 64 young people that are being sponsored to attend. But of course, our capacity, we're thinking about, we'll probably have about 150 people total at this conference. All right, then we have another deliberate dialogue on human rights, climate justice, and gender. Closing panel is focused on climate finance, and we're really going to be leaning into the Bridgetown Initiatives team to speak to us and engage with us in a real meaningful way during this session here. And especially this is sort of one of the, the interests, of course, when PM Motley will talk to us. I'm sure there'll be a lot about finance. Okay, so then day three, we're going to go on a tour, and this is going to be a roof to reef tour, and this is looking at one of the project sites that the government of Barbados has focused on adaptation. And so now they've never really done large tours for this. So this is something that we're putting in a request, but we know that this program exists and it's part of their approach to adaptation and mitigation. So this is the plan for this day. And then we come back for an afternoon session, which will be a deliberate dialogue on human rights, climate justice, and gender. And then our closing, the final dialogue there is adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And then we have a joint panel. So then we will connect back with a number of the young people who've been part of the By Case for a closing panel on this day, which is our road to COP28. And then also some of the students who've been part of the By Case are going to give a presentation from there. And then our last day, the students from Barbados are going to have a climate march, but we will be focusing on, we're going to start with a networking sort of activity, and then moving into speakers talking about the NDC and global stocktake, a panel on mitigation, and then another deliberate dialogue. So Brandon, this is where I can see you really helping us lead the policy. And if you're not yet part of the policy team for sustainable energy, maybe that's something that would be a really good connection as well, because the policy teams, just so everyone is aware, I'm going to zoom out a bit now. Again, the policy teams, and everyone should have access to this document here. It's hyperlinked in that master document. So this is our current makeup of our policy teams. We start meeting at 8 o'clock. So if you're not part of one of these, please, we want to make sure that everyone is in the policy group that they want to be part of. But these documents the documents that we produce, this policy document is going to be the foundation for the deliberate dialogue. So I think this is an appropriate moment for me to stop and to invite Leslie Archer. Would you kindly, if you're available, share a little bit about sort of where we are with the deliberate dialogue process, and just sensitize those of us who aren't as familiar to it?
Hi. Good afternoon. Hi, thank you for your patience. I came in just when you were mentioning that it has to be done in person. So I'm not sure what all you said. But to recap, the deliberative dialogue, it's a means of hosting a conference or a conclave that is highly interactive, where you discuss, usually if there's a subject that's has very polarized opinions or polarized views exist on it, and you want to come to a solution or some decisions with making it, also ensure everybody is informed and on the same page and feels involved in the process of discussion and solution creation. You can Google the term to learn more information. So I spoke to UB and they have graciously offered to give us the training you require. It requires trained facilitators on a count of 1 to 8 persons. So 1 facilitator per every 8 persons. And you are trained to be a facilitator of this dialogue process, depending on what the topic is. So UB has offered to provide the training for us students, us young people, for free. But their request is that it has to be done in person. And the in-person, and they will also help put together an issue guide. So an issue guide is basically, they said because of the amount of people, it'll probably be done in a PowerPoint, summarizing all of the facts of the situation to come where we are today, so that everybody's on the same page and know what's going on. They will help us put that together in preparation for the policy document that we are generating. That's a part of the training, the training session. The training session will last about 3 hours. They said that they will post it in the American Corner, that's in the library, the UB's main library. And it has to be done the first or the second week of September because the schedule, school's starting to pick up. They also said that they're willing to come at their expense with us to provide the in-person training for non-Bahamian-based team members in Barbados the day before, which is what I think I heard Nikita mention already. It would also be about 3 hours, but you need to do it to ensure you have the skills to handle the discussion and to ensure that effective practical solutions come to light and that they're communicated in a effective way. So that in a nutshell is it. And also the person who is professionally trained in this, she has trained other facilitators around the US. She said she's also willing to serve as master moderator of the deliberative dialogue. That's just to make sure that all the facilitators and to handle any contention, just to supervise us to make sure that everything is going well, and she could deal with any other issues because that's her specialty. Like, she's willing to just come along and assist us with that as well. And I think that's about it. Once I get the letter back from you, I guess after we make whatever adjustments, I'll send it to her and then we'll move forward with the dates. And I don't know if y'all, I mean, I guess we are subject to when they are available in terms of the one for the Bahamas, but the first, like I said, the first or the second week of September, I don't know if y'all would prefer in the morning or the afternoon or the evening, wherein I could offer that, or I don't know if to just leave that up to them. But she said that's when she's most flexible.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for that update. There's a lot of there's a lot of follow-up emails that I have for many people. So if you haven't yet received from me, you will. Sorry, Bishan, did you want to say something? Okay, so I think that's exciting. And I love that we'll have the 2 trainings, one here in the Bahamas and then also one in Barbados. So you will see on the program, we have that day on the mapped out already. So that is great. All right. So as far as location is concerned, the event will be held at the Hilton in Barbados. So we will have, I've received an initial quote. We are going to see what type of discount will be available for us to receive. And then from there, we will proceed. We will also ensure that there are information available for people who will be self-financing their way so that they have access to, you know, just if I'm booking in Barbados, what are, you know, economic options for housing. Sorry, so what I want to do before we wrap up this section, Brandon, is there something that you've heard so far that you want to reflect on or contribute to?
Well, the most interesting, of course, thing was that I work at UB, and this is the first time I'm actually hearing about these plans to be held at UB. So I think one thing we can do is try to improve the communication that's going on, because if I work there and I don't know about it, nobody else does either.
No, well, we've just started. Like, this is like planning in action. So you are right on time for us to be able to educate everyone about it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's the only concern, because I thought it'd be really, really weird.
Well, so I guess what department are you in? Because the person from UB who just spoke is from the policy department. Which UB department are you part of?
I'm from Small Island Sustainability. So
Okay.
it's very weird that I'm the program coordinator for SIS, and yet this is the first time I'm hearing about this. It makes
I just want.
All right, hold on now.
Just for clarification.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Nikita.
So just for clarification, this is not a University of Bahamas meeting. This is a meeting being convened by YME Bahamas. And this is the Regional Conference of Youth meeting, which is carried on from the first RCOY that was held or convened at UB last year. And so we've had a series of 8 planning meetings for all young people in the Caribbean who want to be involved in the co-creation of what this next RCOY gets to look like. So everyone who's on this call is an equitable co-creator of the final product, from policy to meeting to climate actions. So we're really excited to have the SIDS department on, because there's just so much alignment with what we're talking about and what you do. So where there are clear opportunities for synergy to anchor in, to create accessibility, to expose as many young people, because it's not just you at UB, there's we have to hit every single country. So we really have to be mobilizing our network so we can spread the word about what we are co-creating here. So I hope that helps.
I understand. I understand fully. It's just that over my time here, is that sometimes things may happen in the background, and we at SAS find out day of when they have these events. Let's say in our building, for example, and that's it's rather demoralizing when these things occur, because at bare minimum we should know what's going on in our building, and when we get there the next day and discover there's a whole group of people and we don't even know who they are. It really undermines what we're doing in SAS, and because SAS is an integral part of I think what these activities are.
Right.
Yeah, I think yes, while this is not a UB specific event, given that it's going to be held at UB.
No, it's not. It's held in Barbados.
Oh, so it's not actually on campus.
What's being held at University of Bahamas is one of the pre-training meetings, which
Right.
will be at, so Archer just told us about the first training that's going to be taking place in the American Corner in the library at UB. And so our conversation just now was about what date do we want that pre-training to be, the first or second week in September. The second training will be at the Hilton or some other location in Barbados on the first or day zero. Okay, cool. But to what you're saying, I hold space, and I appreciate that communication needs to be really important. And so I think this is a really good opportunity for us to pivot to the communications team for them to give us an update on where they are. Lauren?
Hi, everyone. So updates. Antonise and I have been working on mostly social media strategy thus far, planning out the posts. We still need to do the initial send out of the conference and that logistical information. So that's a post that's going to go up tomorrow. So that will be when we start hitting the ground running for getting people aware of what's happening with the conference. And we've also completed the application form for the sponsored youth delegates as well. So that will also be going up later this week for people who are applying to be funded or have sponsorship to travel, can begin filling out that form. I think for the communications team, something that would be really helpful would be, if what we're still looking for is, we'd like to have more representation from each of the different countries and territories, just so we can get this as far and wide as possible and make sure we're not siloed into the same networks that we have, especially thinking about language and thinking about just territories and places that haven't been represented before. So we have a tab on the master spreadsheet for communications contacts. It would be really, really great if we could continue filling that out with people, organizations, really anyone who's in the climate sphere that we can keep sharing this information to. And most of it, what we have is the Bahamas, Barbados, and Trinidad so far. So if there's representatives from other countries that if you can please help to fill that out, or send them in the chat as well. Send them directly to me. If you find them on Instagram, you can share them with the YME242 Instagram as well. But yes, just having more contacts that we can share these posts to as we continue to have them and post them far and wide would be great. And we're also looking for people who would be points of contact in each of these different countries and regions as well, to share and spread the message. So thinking of, I can pull up the list of the 33 countries as well if people would like to see and be reminded, but we really have a lot of countries that we want to be talking to and hearing from that we just haven't really been able to touch on yet. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly, just as a reminder. So there's 33 countries and territories. So far, these are the main ones that we've had contacts with, but Belize, Cayman Islands, all of these other ones, especially the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, it would be really, really great to have some more contacts, and French and Dutch speaking as well, So more than just the English speaking Caribbean. Yes, these are the countries. So if we could have some more references from those, that would be great. No other updates, I think, for the general meeting. Antonise and I are just on our grind. So
That's amazing. I think Island Innovation, there's some notes, Lauren, that are coming into the chat box that I think would be really good to connect with. Island Innovation is a very wide network, so I think that would be great.
stunning. I'm gonna take some notes. Thank you. You can keep sending them in the chat as well. But if we have these Instagram accounts, that way when we do Island Innovation, when we do post, we can DM it to them and ask them to share as well. Does Caribbeans the Climate have an Instagram page? That would be lovely to have. Thank you.
Yeah, we got all that. We're just starting up, so we're not huge or anything, but we can
That's okay.
put stuff up there. And then our email list, we got like 40 people on there, so put
Cool.
on too.
It's not about the size, you know, it's about the engagement. So you can have a smaller number of people as long as they're passionate, especially within this sector. It'd be really great. And with young audiences, that'd be wonderful. But yeah, I got to keep trying to figure out how to get more. I think even with the demographics of the chat and who we've been reaching, I think we still need some more from elsewhere. So I'll keep thinking about ways that we can broaden that reach.
Okay, so Mario has some really good, also, yeah, he's just typing in the chat. You should check it out. Was someone else wanting to say something?
I wanted to ask, what about the UWI magazine, their monthly magazine? I think it's called Chill. They have one for alumni to post it in there.
Good to know.
But I'm not
Right.
sure if, I mean, you seem to be targeting, you seem to be doing niche targeting. That would obviously be a much broader base, but definitely you'll be able to reach persons from all over the Caribbean.
Yeah, definitely not doing niche targeting. Definitely trying to cast the net as wide as possible. I think what I was specifically thinking about was just within the environmental sphere at first, but really any way that we can reach young people in the Caribbean would be great. So actually, even if it's not environmental organizations, just any organizations or even forums or magazines or pages that young people in the Caribbean read and access, that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's very important. And I think once the communication starts building, momentum will grow from there. So we'll be able to reach more. Okay, thank you for that update. Very informative. I'm just getting back to my notes. Okay, so fundraising. We are making progress. I would say slow and steady is the best way to describe what is happening. We have verbal confirmation that UNICEF will be able to support delegates from the Southern Caribbean attend the RCOY in Barbados. So now seeking to identify donors who can deal with some of the Northern Caribbean participants. We are going to be engaging the embassy of UAE in Havana this week. So seeking financing from them as them being the host country for COP28. And there's a host of other smaller asks that have been that are in progress and expanding. So definitely, if you think you have people who would be interested in participating and donating financially or in-kind resources, please connect with myself or give the contacts to Marjan. We are building out our communications team for fundraising. So by next week, I should have a bit more specifics on how much we have left to raise based on where we are. Also understanding that we do not have much time. However, I think now that our program is refined, we have a very nice package that is going to facilitate our asks. So I'm not very concerned at the moment about our ability to secure the resources that we need. So that is my fundraising update. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Please. Shendel, please.
I jumping in, like for me, okay, just my updates. The one for storytelling, I would hope for some support. I realize, I mean, I don't want to do too much in one day. So if anybody else is up to support some storytelling, like setting an agenda and just like the kind of content we want to roll out around that. For the anti-oppression one, I put a recording of what the session generally entails. The slide deck I'll change up a little bit, but that's generally the same content, and that's all I'll go. And I also shared some Instagram handles for social media that could potentially reach out around like Lauren's ask. So that's my little update there. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, great. All right, so I'm actually really excited for this next topic. And this is thanks to Garvey. So Garvey's not with us again today, but he was very good about reminding us in our WhatsApp group about the importance of science and research for climate solutions, and us taking a moment to have a very intentional conversation about how we sensitize more of the region and young people in the region to the opportunities of scientific research, for not only being able to tell our stories in ways that really will help us receive the resources that we need, and articulate what our needs are, and also how our needs vary in different parts of our regional archipelago. But then also, I think as I've been reflecting on COP28 and just how hot it is, and as my mom is showing me just like a news article about all the bleaching coral, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it, like I've been yelling about this. I don't want to hear the newspaper article about the dying corals, because emotions. But I think now it's really important for us to think about our solutions, right? And how we're going to, like, what are we going to do? And for those of us who do have really strong backgrounds in research, how do we really build the research questions that help to support, that give us the answers that we actually need? Because sometimes the solution or the problem is that we're just not asking the right question. So how do we ensure that as we are thinking about, the different SDGs and all the different prongs of the climate crisis, if you will, how do we really anchor these into maybe regional research questions that can help to drive really tangible metrics, cross-cuttingly, so that we are better at articulating what our challenges are, but also what our needs are. Because most of the time we don't know what we need. And so the help that we're getting is not meeting our needs, but we don't know how to tell people that. Or people just can't see us because we're not in the current science systems or metrics. Like, I don't know how many of you are aware, and maybe you all probably are on this call. But like often when like the World Bank reports, or a lot of these reports are done, they look at population starting with 1 million and above. And so that means obviously for most of the SIDS, we're not factored into a lot of these global stories. So we really need to have to come and now tell our story. And I think this is where the power of research lies. So I'd love to open the mic and hear people's reflections on that and what we can do and how we should have that as a component of this RCOY or the training that comes beforehand.
I definitely agree. A scientific opponent should be present and there What format was he proposing it would take? A panel or a speaker or what?
I think he wanted us to have a bigger conversation. So, yeah, please carry on.
I mean, a bigger conversation in what sense? You mean just us conversing about it and the importance of it, or you mean at the conference?
Well, I think the question is, what do we need to do to sensitize more of our Caribbean young people to the sciences? What are the tangible actions required, and how do we get there? And I think in order for us to answer that, there has to be kind of a higher, more meta level conversation about where we are, what the needs and barriers are to that, and then how we proceed. Please, Chandel.
Just going on, like, for research in the Caribbean, we run into the issue of like resources all the time, and especially around tertiary education, for us is very much a privilege. And research is just like being a professional student. And I think within our context, people don't have the capacity for that a lot. So in terms of sensitizing, it's empowering young people to believe in education because, but that's a different kind of thing because for our context, we rely that people have to go to work, people have other things going on. So it's trying to empower young people to take on more than they want to because we need the information written down somewhere and we need people to go to school and do it. Sorry, but it's empowerment and hope, I would say. Thanks.
I did a research study on the SDGs from this on the sustainable development goals from the perspective of different stakeholders, policymakers, practitioners, and academics. And the biggest problem in terms of policies and the basically meeting goals, these meta goals or mega goals, was policy implementation in terms of there's a problem with SIDS, small island development states, with they construct policies, but implementing it to actually get the results is a challenge. And then there's also the research also showed that systematic and effective integration and synergy across the different stakeholders, that is across government, practitioners, and academics, was lacking. Even inter-stakeholder communications and effective communication to actually get the results was lacking on a broad scale, like at a high level. So a challenge with SIDS in general is policy implementation due to not necessarily resources are a challenge. It showed that in terms of the technical capacity, but then things fall apart with the communication element of it. I don't know where to take that from there. I just know that I have the empirical data to show the different aspects of the problem and how we could, and they offered recommendations and stuff to overcoming it. I'm not sure if it would be, I mean, I think it would be a good discussion piece if, or maybe I don't have it in Creole for Garvey to read, but yeah, that's my contribution.
Marjan?
I forgot to unmute just now, sorry. I think one of the issues when it comes to just research and like more specifically scientific research and trying to get people involved in that is like partially what Chandel is saying about it being a privilege to actually go to tertiary institution and learn specific things. But even more than that, going to an institution that has the resources to do specific research on top of that, it's difficult to do that and then want to come back to the Caribbean to actually, contribute. And in the same way that Ms. Archer is saying with the rift between academics and government stakeholders and persons like that to have those conversations, it's difficult to communicate, partially because you might not be working with that particular group of persons, you might not be in country doing that work. and there's difficulty in the lack of understanding with the overall projects that come with climate change in general. And I wanted to say that because I think there's a very big, when I speak to people about climate change and in the educational sphere, I think one of the things that there's difficulty in is not nailing down all the different topics that fall under this umbrella of climate change, SDGs. So like considering like all the work that you would do, Nikita, right, at YME Bahamas, doing great work with SDGs, and also coming up with doing work with this conference, but then also the marine aspect of your science aspect of the work that you do. And then even thinking about Dr. Bethel and the work that he does with physical oceanography. What does that mean? What is that? What, like, atmospheric research, what is that? Like, there are so many different, like, even gender and climate, like, how do all these things like fit into one thing? And why does this make a difference? So, and then like, if you are doing specific work in a specific thing, it's hard to make those connections, right? So like for me, if I do specific work in like weather and climate modeling, it's hard for me to get out of the sphere of how do I connect this to marginalized groups and the way that they may be affected, right? So I think that's also a big, there's like disconnect with that as well.
Vishan?
Oh, yeah, I think you're gonna call on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to listen to everyone and what they're saying because I don't live in the Caribbean. My parents are from there, so it's interesting to just hear these different issues that you face. So, yeah, one thing I was curious about is like how open people are to going abroad for school because it seems like the schools over there don't have as much opportunities obviously as the schools here, and Marjan just commented about that, about people going abroad and then maybe not wanting to come back afterwards. So I think that's a big issue. um as I was going through all the materials, I was really wondering about the science because I didn't see much of it in there. I saw all these other things, so I was wondering about that. So I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's definitely something that has to be expanded upon. But Marjan was right in terms of like there's so many different fields to cover. So I'm trying to think in my head like what are ways that we can expose these young people to the science in itself and then the opportunities that are out there. So some things that came to mind was maybe like a talk or something, but I don't know, probably something interactive would be good. A panel. I was also thinking about maybe doing like a online demo beforehand. So if we can upload like some Jupyter notebooks or code and put some data on a Google Drive and do like a live demo and tell people, because I have some training materials that I've used with interns. And then Gabe, who is the director of Caribbeans for Climate, he's Cuban. We have a bunch of talks that we made also for outreach that we've done. So I'll just show you I'll show you one real quick. Just a couple slides real quick. But we have, do you see some slides right here?
Yes, we can see your screen.
So we have a bunch of talks that we've given throughout this past year with outreach. So we have some talking about weather and climate change. A lot of it's the context of around where we live, but it can be easily adjusted, or we can work with some people from the Caribbean to adjust it to the needs of what people are looking for over there. So we have some parts where we talk about climate modeling and how that works. And then I think at the end too, Gabe put some resources in here. So he has some information about career paths and different degree pathways. So master's, PhD, and then other options. So I think it's important not only to just show them that research is cool and interesting and it makes you feel smart and like you're being productive, but also at the same time, the different pathways that it can lead in terms of careers, and that indeed actually it can be very lucrative and you can live a nice life and very meaningful life. So yeah, I would be all for helping out with whatever science aspect that the group decides that they want to do. I think for Caribbeans for Climate on our end, we're mostly academics in that group. So I think there'd be a bunch of other people who'd be interested in helping out with that too. So I just throw that out there.
Awesome, thank you. Marjan?
Thank you. Thank you, Vishan. Very good stuff. I just wanted to throw in here too as well, when we think about giving particular presentations in that realm, I recognize where Vishan's coming from because that is the path that I followed when I was going to do school, right? Go through the path of go masters, do the atmospheric science, do all this and that, do the internships and things like that. How the difference between being someone who is born in the Caribbean versus someone who is born in America is that you have different access to resources and privileges, right? It's harder to do specific programs if you're not from the place. And I think that has to be highlighted. What are actual, so if we have those kind of conversations, what are the opportunities that we can actually present to young people in the Caribbean? Is it that you can present that this is a specific PhD opportunity or master's opportunity that is specifically put for persons from the Caribbean, small island developing states, least developed countries, where we want you in this place to actually build capacity? Is there more conversation happening with our universities in the Caribbean where they're giving those opportunities in a way that works? Are we also addressing the fact that some of our universities are very much lacking the same resources that might be expected as somewhere like Princeton? Like the GFDL laboratory does not exist here, right? Where I was, like, I did the internship there, was great, but Noah worked with me when I was at Cape Luther Institute. We did work with them there because of the things we had there, like the boats and everything else. But that wasn't an opportunity that was something that we could like expand like with other people. It was me on a boat getting seasick. There was nothing like, this is a great outreach opportunity. So I guess what my ending point is, like, if we go into this, I think one of the things we have to address is one, the big sphere of like what all falls under climate change, what all falls under climate science, what are all the different opportunity, the different fields you could go into from there, and then also what opportunities exist within the Caribbean or what opportunities exist outside of the Caribbean that are easier for persons to get access to versus just these are the cool things you can do. Great, but what roadblocks exist that I might have to overcome if I want to do this one thing?
Right. So, I definitely agree with all of that. I think it's something we need to definitely think a lot harder about, and then keep in mind the demographics of people that we're serving from all different nations. You know, I see a lot of times in research, though, there's all these foreign nationals from Asia, so I don't see why there should be a problem of there being people from the Caribbean too. So, yeah, I think we just need to synthesize the information and sort it into the right place. I would say that I've been talking to some people from Hampton University who work in their atmospheric sciences over there, and they're very much interested in recruiting PhD students from the Caribbean and accessing the network that we have with our group. So I think it could be good to get some academics, people involved, maybe to say something, or I don't know, just to at least put the word out there. And I think it would be helpful to at least let the students know, like, when they're gonna go take their bachelor's degree, at least like what is the good classes to take, like what kind of math courses do you need in order, if you want to get into climate modeling, or if you want to get into the social science aspect of things, what kind of stuff should you be doing to prepare yourself for that. So definitely it's a bigger conversation, but I think that we're trending towards the right direction with this discussion.
I'm wondering to throw in a different angle, if it would be helpful to give examples of the interconnectivity between climate change and other factors in society, such as gender, or just things that or aspects that people may see hard to understand how these two get related. But like, if I have an interest in gender, how can that be connected to climate change? And just teaching them in a practical way how to critically make these connections that will naturally flow into a desire to increase, empirical knowledge, or to increase the production of empirical knowledge and scientific evidence on it. You know what I mean? Instead of just separately or siloed, show people how to critically think through the interlinkages. which would force science to come at the fore in a way that would force science or an interest in science research to emerge.
This is such a rich conversation, and I am so happy that we're recording. I'm going to share my screen because there are many components of what we've been talking about that I think is important. So this is the YOUNGO website, and this link here, the Rethink Global Initiative for Sustainable Development. Okay, so this came out of last year's RCOY. So you can, this is the first output document that we produced. This was remodeled, or sort of, it's a second version, if you will, because it took the SDG document that we put together, and then it mapped it on top of the African Union Agenda 2063 sort of objectives, if you will. So the reason why I'm showing you this, because one, we have to rethink what science is, what research is, and how it's a tool. And so I think what's interesting in the conversation that we just were having is that we have two different vantage points talking about research, right? There's the Western science, right? These knowledge systems of these, universities, primarily Western-based universities, that have been driving a lot of the policy conversations, the innovations for everything climate, whether you're talking about, and when I talk climate, I talk cross-cutting, right? Every single SDG 1 through 17 needs to be addressed and has an intersection in this climate narrative. And this is why last year's RCOY, we mapped our work onto the SDGs. So the vision coming out of last year's RCOY, right, was we hold a vision for a shared future where all beings have access to a dignified, peaceful, and abundant life guided by Indigenous knowledge and wisdom. All right, so remember, this was those who were there painted from the RCOY. But what we also did, so those who were working in the policy teams, we went through each of the SDGs and we set sort of large scale actions, right? And some of them are so SDG 1, action by 2030, match 1 million young people with economic opportunities as we work towards a shared future with no poverty, right? So for each SDG, we have a high level action. And so these are like the policy recommendations. Those of you who were on the policy team, you would have written that. And this is the Pan-African document. Intentionally so Pan-African because our challenge has been, as a region, Caribbean-wise, is accessing the money. We struggle to access the money because we don't have the data to tell our stories. And then also we don't have the access or opportunity or those financial systems that institutions like Princeton have, right? Anyhow, so, this is Garvey here, who's actually the reason why we're having this conversation today is definitely Garvey nudging us. And so each of these actions need to be grounded into our respective communities, right? So YOUNGO Bahamas, I'm going to stop sharing this. So just so you know, each of those, for each action, there's an SDG for an action for each SDG. So within that climate action, long-term vision, essentially, over the next consecutive years, as we convene our RCOY, we're convening to measure our metrics on our co-created climate action. One of the action items that we are bringing, at least that YOUNGO is bringing to the table. And so this is where, when we move into the climate solutions space of thinking, right? So not just the policy, we're not just thinking policy, but we're also thinking what are the tangible actions that can be implemented in our respective communities. And maybe that action is, we need a research study on X, Y, and Z, right? But we need to get clear on what we want to do as it's mapped to each of the different SDGs. All right, so coming from the SDG 6 perspective, so water, that's one of the spaces that I'm working in. We are going to, I'm just going to show you this, because one of the research actions that we will be bringing into our RCOY, see if we can get closer. So our climate solution. So one of the reasons, we all know data deficiency exists all throughout and pretty much every single sector. So we have to address our data gaps. This is critical. We also know we have to build the capacity so people can actually do the thing. Because we've just had this long conversation about people are in crisis mode, education is a luxury, most people cannot read at like a 6th grade level, you know, so like there is a lot that's required. And this is why through YME Bahamas, we work a lot with community science and just upskilling people until they can then execute certain tasks on different, specifically for data collection purposes, understanding that a knowledge economy is a real viable industry that we can develop in our region, but we need to leapfrog our people into that space. Right? We've been excluded from that space. That's history moving forward. We got to be intentional about what our education looks like and what our skills development looks like so that we can target, you know, different young people into different research science projects under each of the SDGs, because that's a real way of, you know, cultivating insights, selling this knowledge, and generating much higher standards of living than what most of us are currently experiencing. So with that being said, one of the asks coming for young people attending RCOY is we're going to be building out the Royal Raincatchers program. So Anthony's, this is who's working on the communication team with Lauren. And also Dr. Anwala, who is part of the CC research team, water team, are building out this research project. So we're going to come to in Barbados, we will show up with rain gauges for at least 2 for each participant that is being sponsored, because one of the sponsorship asks is that you are committing to installing and ensuring the monitoring of a rain gauge. It doesn't mean that you actually have to monitor it yourself, but we have to build out this network by 2 rain gauges in each country within the territory within our region. And so this is one of the, I would say, science-based or research-driven climate action solutions that will be scaled through our RCOY. So now the question is to each of you on this call or anyone listening in, what are other research-driven climate solutions can we build out into our next phase of our climate action plan? Because all this work that we're doing isn't just about going to make sure that some policy recommendations are included in in a conversation at COP28, right? We need to create a system that works for us, which is why the technology transfer is a big part of this year's RCOY. Because if we can ensure that 66 young people in the region have an amazing computer, have a solar charging pack, and a full year of quality internet access, then we can organize in real ways, right? So does it solve all our problems? No. But what we have to work towards are how do we tangibly minimize these barriers to participating in science, right? And they're huge, and there's so many, and they vary, but we have to get specific about what the barrier is, and then get clear about this is the solution, this is what we need, and then we just stay hopping and bouncing. And what I am personally working on through my work with YME Bahamas is generating the financial systems to support research in the region. Because what the challenge that the region has, and I think Chandel, you talked about it initially, when you look at the high level of science research, it's really funded either by governments or by industry, right? So it's like the big industries that are trying to like advance and being at the cutting edge, they're the ones who are funneling money into these universities that support these innovation, centers that are just pumping out all these ideas that end up making people billions of dollars, right? This is all about money. I like to make sure that we remember that. Because sometimes for a scientist, especially, you can get so caught up in just like the information that you forget that it's an economic system. But just thank you for bearing with me. I am going to close this loop. But what I've been focusing on is, so building out the social enterprise side of YME Bahamas is looking at heritage tourism, trade, so Ocean Love Coffee, and vacation rentals as financial engines to support science in the Bahamas, and building out a solid research home for people in the region and anywhere really, but our focus really is Caribbean, Pan-African, anchoring in a lot of these marginal communities on how do we ensure that science is co-created and benefits us. And this requires, so like all PIs who join the Cat Island Conservation Institute for perspective, their research questions and their work has to be co-created with community, which means that you have to train the community, wherever your community is based, with whatever specific skills are needed, so that that person or those cohort can become line items in your larger, multi-year research budget. Right? Because this is how we are creating economic opportunities. And I think this was one of the points that Garvey really wanted us to talk about, is not forget that science and research can be an economic revolution for our region, and for multiple levels, because it allows us to tell our story so we can access more of that money available that should be ours, right? And so get it flowing through our networks. But then more importantly, anyways, lost my train of thought, so I'm going to pause there. Final thought, I invite you, especially if you are really strong in a research area or know of someone who has a project that would be perfect to slot into or scale up through one of the SDGs, and there can be multiple, but what we need is, we need to tell a regional story, and we really need to be strengthening what is possible for science, and just also the co-creation of research opportunities throughout the region amongst ourselves. Okay.
So could I give some feedback or some reflective thoughts?
Please.
In my mind, two thoughts are emerging. The first one is something, it wouldn't be a national, but maybe a regional / national repository for both traditionally generated knowledge as well as like citizen science, to bring everything that we have together in a repository, and from there we have access to scientific knowledge, and to generate stories from there, and to increase, because it would provide a space and place where people and researchers, etc., can meet to get information, to generate ideas, to meet and discuss, and a template for how those meetings and idea generations and discussions can occur can also be inspired by the current SDGs model. Like I had to do some extensive research on them, and they have case studies, they have study sessions and quizzes, they have ideas and just the diverse communication outlets they have, in addition to it being a repository. So it's like an outreach as well, with, very tangible and intangible goals slated to create change or to create the ideal or whatever we're headed for. So the combination of the repository for whatever is currently available could be a base in terms of academic, quote unquote, academic science, as well as the more traditional or organic knowledge, as well as the citizen science, those three parts. And that once we have that, foundation virtually, then the outgrowth of the different communication strategies to stretch the tentacles of the financial system that we're creating to demonstrate effective resolution and solutions.
Welcome, Garvey. We're so happy that you're here. We've been having a really rich conversation about research in the region and what's possible. How are you?
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I'm great. Hope everybody is doing well. So happy that we have this conversation about researches, and I'm waiting for the new concept that.
I think you muted him too.
Garvey, unmute yourself, please.
Huh?
We'd love to hear your thoughts about research and, just what is important, especially from the health perspective.
Okay. First of all, a lot of things we know about climate change is based on research, right? So a lot of countries, I mean the USA, Canada, and a lot of big countries, we have the big universities made a lot of research about climate change and this effect and how its effect our environment. So in the Caribbean, I think we should do the same to know the ocean for the Bahamas, Barbados, about it, how the climate change affecting, and a lot of countries should collect this kind of data and show the other country, the big country, okay, and the Caribbean, the problem affect us, and we should wait, and we should think how to solve with the research we made.
Thank you so much.
I don't know if you catch.
We did.
Understand what I'm saying, but it's internet issue. So and this is my point, and I don't know if somebody about it, or if we have the same thought.
Thank you so much, Garvey. You were a bit
as but this
okay.
is what I thought about it, and we should. This is what I think we should do. One of the things I would like to work in. I don't know if do we have someone who can react about what I say?
Yes, thank you, Garvey. Sorry, the internet was a bit bad, but we got, I think, the gist of what you were saying for the most part, and I would love to open the floor if anyone wanted to reflect on Garvey's share.
Okay.
I would just say, like, in terms of tangible actions from this discussion so far, I think one thing we're trying to think about is how we're incorporating science and the awareness of science as an opportunity, as an endeavor for these young people. Is that correct, Nikita? Yes. So maybe, I don't know, one idea that's coming to mind is maybe just doing like something simple could just be like a 3 or 4 person panel where you have someone like Garvey and someone like Marjan or other people that are from the Caribbean and went through all the, the rigmarole of going to school and all that. And maybe that would be just a simple, useful way to get started. And then you can also think of more robust things to do, like some sort of science demo. I think the rain gauge thing is a really good one. So that's one aspect of the scientific contribution. But I think it'd be very important to at least let the students know that this pathway is available, and then how people who they can identify with have gone about accomplishing becoming part of the scientific enterprise.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think we should go, right? So you say all the thing, and yeah, that's it. I don't know if I can be part of the panel, but yeah.
Because I heard that he mentioned health too, so I think it's very important to have a diverse set. And Marjan alluded to this earlier, but having a diverse set of sciences too, so health, atmosphere, ocean, biodiversity, social science, things like that. So just obviously you can't have like
Yeah,
10 people on a panel, but just to be mindful and try to be diverse in terms of disciplines.
Okay, so I'm just going to get us to anchor this in. How do we want to incorporate this into our existing schedule? So is this something that we want to do virtually, or do we want to have something both? We can make it a webinar, but if we want something to be physical, a physical segment, which I think we should have a physical segment at the RCOY. My question is, do we want that to be like a special evening thing? What format, or do we want to just add it on here to the end of maybe day 2? I would love, I guess, your thoughts on where and how we want to integrate this research component, which is critically important, into our program.
I think this is a big topic, just from my perspective. So I think like to introduce it as something that wouldn't it doesn't necessarily have to be a panel. It could just be a quick, like, what is, when we talk about climate science and research, what do we mean? And explaining like the different aspects of science to a group of persons, possibly in the evening, and then probably make a bigger webinar. I think that would be helpful. I feel like that's something that could be good with really all the organizations who are represented here right now, to make a bigger conversation. Also, like, I think the way that Ms. Archer was talking about with the different what was it? The different like quizzes and things like that, just a repository thing that people can refer back to. There's also a conversation when it comes to access with Latin American countries where they've started using more, well, they've, I think, always been using like more open access data and what that looks like. in terms of research, and also integrating that in the conversation, I think would be important. So yes, I think this is a larger topic, but I think having a small introductory conversation in the evening might be helpful before introducing like a larger webinar with bigger conversation and more resources and access to persons who can speak more on it.
So does this feel right? Please edit my verbiage, but let's see, doing like essentially a social on the second night. So at one of like a local restaurant or bar or meeting space. And then we can kind of have a key maybe panel, or 2 or 3 people can have yeah, we can just have like a 2 or 3, like a more of a conversational piece.
You know, one thing, so I like this idea, and I've gone to things like this before. So one way that I've seen it done is you have people with like pins on them, so you know that they're an expert at whatever. So it could be like, this is our health person, this is our person that knows about health research. So people can just roam around and talk to people. So it's more of a social event, but you know, go visit out, you can give them like a bingo card or something, like you visit the health person and talk to them about what their research was and what their path was, and then you get like a stamp or whatever. You can do something like that, or just have designated people that people can wander around to, people that represent different fields, and it could be like a good informal way to get people interested in it. It doesn't have to be a bingo or anything like that, but that could be an idea. But I think just the idea of having designated people, and it's a social event and people can wander around kind of freely, it also takes away from like, you know, the strain of doing like a seminar or a panel and forcing people to sit down and listen. This way they're more active.
Cool. That I think is
So,
great. Darby?
you mean an interactive panel? So you mean an interactive panel, like, you know, you have people who sit and the public will will be able to talk to them, ask them questions, but it will be like a conversation.
So Garvey, I really want to make sure that we capture everything that you said, and we lost a lot of it. Could you please either type in the Zoom chat box or in our WhatsApp group in a little bit more detail? But I'm hearing that we want to facilitate a really good conversation, but I want to make sure that we capture all those details.
I do want to say I like the idea of it being like a bingo kind of thing, as Vishan pointed out, partially because I think it'd be good practice for students to actually like talk up to people, like eventually go to conferences and do things like that anyway. But I think it'd be good to have an introduction. This is everyone represented, and it gives everybody a good amount of time to delve into their personal interests versus like we're having this large conversation of what this thing could be. And I think that'd be fun. True.
This is so good. Maybe what we do is we make it also like would we want to have a poster session so that those who are researchers can submit a poster, and then it can be a bingo, like a bingo setup, or like with like
Yeah, you can maybe just ask them like to bring a poster if they have one. Maybe it'd be a lot of pressure to put on someone because it's sometimes annoying to carry around a poster, but you could invite them too. I think most people would probably do it. You just have their poster standing up right there, and they're standing next to it, and you could go talk to them, and at least they would have a visual to point to. as well.
Okay, wonderful. I think this is really great progress that we've made this evening on the research conversation front. I do want to just note time. We've run over into our policy session a little bit. So thank you everyone for just being here and showing up, and just the very rich conversation that we're having tonight. I think there's going to be some really exciting things that will unfold from this. What I think we want to make sure we do is that we add a poster session. We'll make it a poster session and a networking bingo, which can be really fun. And then for anyone who has a poster that they want to submit, I think it would be a great opportunity and knowledge sharing opportunity for all those in attendance.
Yeah, you could even tell them to just have like a laptop with some slides ready. That could be an easy one to do as well.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. We'll make sure that happens. All right, so if you have to leave, thank you so much and have a great week. We will catch up with you as the week flows. And so let us now transition into our policy conversation. So before we transition, does anyone want to make any final comments or questions, concerns about planning of the RCOY? If so, we'd love to hear your thoughts now. Otherwise, we will shift into policy space. Okay. So in doing that, Leslie, can you please talk to us a little bit more about the information package that would be required for the deliberate dialogue? The reason why I'm asking this is that we know we are all creating a number of policy documents. So we want to make sure that we have a standardized formatting. And also we want to ensure that there is support information so that we can educate the wider breadth of Caribbean young people about these topics. So I see our policy conversations as being sort of very tiered or sort of segmented, and just being an opportunity for us to generate, better disseminate knowledge about these different policy thematics, but then also ensure that there is the co-creation of a foundational document that will be what we share with the rest of the RCOY community, or COY community. But then also the documents that will be the foundation of each of the deliberate dialogue sessions. So Archer, do you want to share a little bit more?
Hi, okay. So what I think first of all would be most useful is if I post a sample of an issue guide at some point this week into the WhatsApp group. Just from what I know of them, the issue guides, it's very short. One of the benefits of it is that it's a concise, maximum usually 2 pages. If it's a very complex document, it may be like a 4-page thing that discusses the issue, the history of the issue, how it emerged, that general background knowledge, and then it presents three different, I guess, avenues that either have been taken or are being considered to travel that road, that in order to reach the end goal, or the solution, or in order to find a solution. So different, maybe streams of thought or arguments, usually 3 different ones that have garnered
attention or movement around them. Obviously scientifically presented with, resources, with the citations, etc. on it, just in a very attractive, palatable, easy to digest format. So it takes a lot of the hardcore policy stuff and simplifies it for readers in an attractive way. Connecting that to what we're doing now in terms of creating, I guess, our policy recommendations. So what I am thinking of and what I'm working with Kelly and I working on our policy subject, it's more of a kind of the same thing where you present. The first section is where you present the issue, the history and the background of the issue, and then or the context, the background context, and then you make the proposal or the recommendation. I don't know, I'm on my phone right now, so I don't have access to show you, but I can post it later. But is that I'm assuming that we will only be generating maybe, 3 or 4 pages on each subject, right? The most. And you're talking about just like a set, maybe guideline for everyone to follow. So like maybe this week, I'm not sure what people have already completed. It would be to complete the background section of it, or what is the background and the context of the problem, and then to put forth the recommendations with justification, and implications, sorry.
Okay, so thank you for that context. So I just wanted to share our different working groups. So what we're going to need to do, the way that I see this is that we want to create an information document for each of these working groups. This will then be a general education resource that will be publicly available. And then we also want to ensure, because we're also creating tools, right? This is a tool. So we want to be able to provide additional links. If young people want to go on deep dives, we want to try and facilitate this process, because our goal should be that the young people who are coming into the RCOY have at least had the opportunity to sensitize themselves with these general thematics. So that means there's going to be a need for there to be a bit of a, I guess, heavy lifting over this next month of September to really get these policy sort of wider understanding information documents put together, and then focusing on really and being really intentional about what these policy recommendations are. And so in order for us to do that, we need to expand our reach again. And so our communications team is going to become really important about us making sure that we are inviting more people. Remember, if you are a lead or a co-lead on one of these working groups, we need to expand, and we want your working group to grow. We don't want it to just be the 2 or 3 people that are currently in this group. We want to make sure that we've got young people from each country who have an opportunity to see this. And even if it's going to take us a minute to translate the documents, we just need to make that momentum. Also knowing that we should be calling in other experts. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to become sort of the PhD specialist on that thematic if we are not. So yeah, I think that would be awesome, Chandel. Brandon, if you're interested in being a co-lead on the energy segment.
Yes, I'm editing it now.
Yay, wonderful. Okay, super. And then this is where we want to really work on our reach, you know, and using our networks to engage as many young people in these conversations. So, what I think we'll do, we have about 20 minutes. I'm going to assign breakout groups, and we'll let those who are, so Chandel and Brandon, I'm going to send you into a room together so you can begin. Uh-oh. Conversation. Okay, great. You should have that invite headed your way. What other working groups do we have in here today? Shanti, how are you?
Exhausted, but I'm okay. How are you?
Great. You are loss and damage, and you are climate justice. And let's see, your NDC, Marjan, biodiversity. Okay. So what we'll do is, I guess my question to you, do you want to use this conversation as this is a conversation time amongst ourselves, or would you like to use this as sort of like a focused planning time for your next steps?
Yeah, I'm gonna tap out because Kelly and I guess we work on it on our schedule.
Perfect.
Right, thanks.
Great.
And I'll send you a reminder note about the letter.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
I guess my one thing is like, is there a format we're supposed to follow when we're writing this up? Because like biodiversity, I could go places, but I don't want to go too in.
So this is something that we're currently building out, and so this is what I'm hoping that I'm allowing Leslie to share that policy information template. Because I think that will be one of the templates that we'll use for each of the policy working group thematics. And then there will also be based on what the problem is, we'll also then have a format for recommendations. But I think we need to have a higher level conversation first so that we can bring more people into the conversation before we start giving recommendations about what needs to happen.
Okay.
So I guess by next week's meeting, we should have that template available.
Okay.
To then be able to share with all the policy team leads. And also, as I guess people know of other people who can be added to some of these working groups, we want to make sure that we do that. Ashanti, where are you with, do you want to just give us an update on where you are, what you've been working on?
Yeah, that's fine. So I've been pulling most of the resources that kind of cross over into the International Court's advisory opinion. So it's kind of a segue point for what it is I wanted to present. So still in the process of gathering most of how I want to essentially present it to the youth from the youth demographic. So that's still in working theory, but again, the matter that I spoke to you about earlier, I'm still kind of navigating because it's the timing. So I'm still in the process of talking to Christiane to see how we're going to do that, because worst case scenario, if I'm not able to operate in the capacity, what I may do is still just supplement the information, because the World Youth for Climate has already given the okay that they would like to integrate as much of the advisory opinion into that segment as possible.
Okay, can you tell us more about the World Youth for Climate?
Oh, yes, there's no problem. So it came the organization formed, I think, in about 2019, and it directly supports the advisory opinions for Vanuatu. So most of the information and most of the integration essentially surrounds climate justice from that perspective, and the ways in which it still affects SIDS from various coastal areas. So just about every region has been covered except the Caribbean, and that was an issue they were trying to kind of rectify sooner rather than later. So the Caribbean front is extraordinarily new. It's literally just in the baby stages of being built. So I already sent them the work plan for how it is I want to begin building the front, and I spoke to them already about the RCOY, and they were completely on board with it because of how closely it coincides with the Latin American Caribbean Week. So one of us is going to be taking the perspective from the RCOY, and my counterpart is going to be more so dealing with that week. So we're trying to integrate as much of the advisory opinions perspective on loss of damage and climate justice into the mix as possible.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for that update. And that's wonderful. So we'll just keep flowing with that. And I guess once you and Christiane, and I think Kelly as well is also on your team, once you have had a chance to I guess refine more, we can move forward and engage more people also in the co-creation of that content.
Okay, it's perfectly fine. I may try to pull some more young people as well from the Climate Justice Academy, because it already directly interjects into what it is we have to do. I just need to see how many of them are familiar that there's an RCOY, because I spoke to, I think, 2 of them recently and they were not familiar. I think one was from Curacao. So I'm going to see how many of
know
them.
yet, because
Yes,
there's been no, I mean, so in the beginning of our meeting, we spoke about the communication strategy. So over the next 2 weeks, there'll be significant online presence about the RCOY moving forward. So everyone who's not aware, we are actively seeking to build that momentum. So definitely keep plugging people in if they're not aware, so that they can engage in the ways that they want to, because we need to grow. And that was one of the important points from today's earlier meeting, especially about communications, is that we just need key contact people in the different countries so that we can expand our network and improve our communication flows. Oh. Marjan, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I don't have anything. I think maybe you and I can connect later about the finance stuff as well.
Yeah.
Under the document. But I'm gonna spend the rest of the time trying to write some stuff out with the biodiversity doc and maybe run it by you later, 'cause I'm not sure.
Okay. No, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause this recording. Okay, so Ashanti, please, now that you're back, you can continue your share if there's more that you wanted to build on.
The only thing else I think I was going to make mention of, what I may do to also help with communications, I will drop the link for the RCOY group inside the Climate Justice Academy group as well, because we have a meeting tomorrow. So I'll also talk to our curator to let her know, because I did tell her there was a lot kind of happening, especially in the space of climate justice, that I wanted to definitely partner with. So I'll just make mention of that tomorrow to them, as well as share the group and see how many of them will begin to trickle in, because the group is really diverse, even though it's only 30 of us. And it really covers a lot of areas that I've had extreme challenges in touching base with up until this point. So I want to take advantage of that as best as possible.
Excellent. And please also share those contacts with Lauren from the communications team.
Okay.
Really trying to build out the focal points throughout the region. So anyone that she needs to be in contact with, please share with her.
Okay.
Great. Super. We have about, it's 8:50 now. I think what we'll do is we'll let, we'll just give us about 5 more minutes of reflection. So I'll pause for that. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for rejoining us. While we close out this session, what I'd just like each person to do, can we just get a brief reflection on what you were prioritized or what the key action is coming out of tonight's policy conversations for you and your thematic?
I will jump in. At least with Brandon and I, we talked about sustainable energy and how we should, like, while we have the pilot projects and stuff, we advocate more for like the mature technologies like wind and solar that's already established rather than, float like tidal or test like things that are still in pilot stage rather than mature.
Sorry, so can you, what was that? The difference, please elaborate.
It's like in like there's a lot of different forms of sustainable energy, and at least within the Caribbean context, we should advocate for mature technologies like wind is in this been around for like 25 years, so it's an established technology, it's a mature technology. Solar panels are now been around for a while, so they're getting more efficient and more these kind of things. So these are the technologies we more consider rather than experimental technologies. Like title is cool and everything, but it's still not necessarily commercial. So we don't necessarily look for the ones that are less research and more commercialized technologies around energy. That's something we kind of discussed that we didn't talk about before. Brandon could correct me if I'm wrong.
Brandon, please contribute your share.
No, she actually said it all actually.
Okay, all right, super. Marjan, did you want to offer?
Sure, yes. I think one of the things I was really focused on with the biodiversity is just how big the word biodiversity is, right? When thinking about the loss that's happening all around the world, and then also considering what biodiversity means for in the Caribbean. So not just looking at coral reefs and fish and all those wonderful things, but also animals on land and specifically plants on land as well. And thinking about those plants, not my strong suit, but something I was thinking about.
Thank you. Ashanti?
Yeah, so the perspective in which I've been looking at the topic has been not just from the standpoint of, well, let me start, I guess, with loss. Let me start actually with climate justice, outlining that a lot of people tend to look at climate justice from a one-sided scope when it actually encompasses so many different things. It highlights the need for justice, but it has to be rooted through the acts of injustice that have been pretty much replaying in different fashions and different scopes, but all rooting back to the same cause and trying to get that as concretely understood as possible. And once gathering some semblance of what that is, actually tying that properly into loss and damage and understanding why loss and damage is again so detrimental because it constitutes to not just, as Marjan outlined, not just biodiversity loss, but it touches sectorial loss, touches ministerial loss. It touches so many avenues by which mankind and our fellow creatures are going to be put in turmoil. And that highlights the importance of the fund and why it needs to be moved from the continual talking stage and some points of transparency actually needs to go into the conversation, because though there's a fund that's now in working theory, it took 30 years for the fund to actually become something that is less than a theory, but it's still something that is in its baby steps. And we have a notorious culture of not being transparent and honest, and we continually look for rabbit holes we can kind of pull the conversation through to avoid accountability. Just getting the young people to understand that unfortunately loss and damage was a fight to get as an agenda, and it will continue to be a fight to get as a fund until some aspects of accountability and transparency are actually rooted in the conversation.
Thank you. Powerful comments for us to close on. So with that, I just want to say thank you everyone for showing up so strong to tonight's work session. You are the real MVPs, and I look forward to continuing this work together. So yeah, we will regroup next week, Monday. And by then, I'm sure there'll be a lot more social media action. So we will be able to share and start building the chatter amongst our respective community members. So with that, thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening and great week. And if there are any other conversations for us to have, please just continue them in the WhatsApp group. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Good night.